It's a common observation that games and other forms of media don't always mix together too well. For every LA noir, you'll have a murdered soul suspect. For every alien isolation, you'll have an alien's colonial marines. Films about games usually bomb at the box office and end up being despised by both critics and audiences, whilst games based on films are usually lazy cash grabs squeezed out to make a quick profit. Why do I bring this up? Because it's all the more inspiring to see a form of media that's over 80 years old perfectly translate into an excellent game. Released on the 29th of September for both Xbox One and PC, Cuphead stormed its way to success far more quickly than most other indie games do today, selling over 2 million copies by the end of 2017 and taking home numerous awards. It stood out from the vast crowd of competitors thanks to looking completely unique and quickly becoming infamous due to its sheer difficulty that managed to torture one games journalist in particular. But why is it so difficult? Why is Cuphead a deliberately challenging, yet fair experience? One can easily suggest the run and gun games that inspired Cuphead in the first place, from Gunstar Heroes to Mega Man and Contra, which were all challenging. However, it's not just the games that inspired it. Nah, the answer could lie in the development of Cuphead itself. Cuphead begins with two brothers entering a casino and gambling away for great success. After losing to the devil, however, and bargaining for their lives, the brothers take a huge risk by defeating each and every colourful yet insanely hard boss around, including the devil himself, and achieve their goals. That's remarkably similar to the story of Cuphead's development, directed by brothers Chad and Jared Moldenhauer. In 1988, both Chad and Jared played a large amount of run and gun games in addition to watching old 30s cartoons they had on VHS such as Betty Boop, Popeye and the Silly Symphonies cartoons from Disney. 22 years later, they decided to make a run and gun game together after seeing that games developed without AAA budgets and publishers could be highly successful like Braid and Super Meat Boy. But despite having numerous great ideas such as a school grades run and gun, they kept returning back to one of the ideas from their childhood. A run and gun game that looked and sounded exactly like the 30s cartoons they loved so much. In an interview with Time, Chad stated, "We always stood out as the weirdos who liked watching the 30s cartoons, so that had been in the back of our minds, and even as we saw the technology change in gaming, we thought, hey, eventually people are going to be doing cartoon games. It's going to be amazing when someone tries to do a cartoon game like the 30s style." And it seemed to never happen. This appealing and unique idea excelled Cuphead from a three-person team to an effort that required an entire studio after showing their work at various trade shows, most notably E3 2014 and 15. The hype demanded more work, and thus the brothers decided to go all in on their childhood dream. To achieve such a feat was no easy step, however. Many of the games that inspired the brothers had somewhat simpler art styles, so to not only commit to making their game look and sound like a 30s cartoon, but also have it be a solid gameplay experience was a long, intense, expensive and difficult process. One that would make the brothers look at home in an asylum compared to other indie developers. As Major Moldenhauer explained to The Verge, "We wanted to make the game that we always dreamed of. We didn't want to let anything change or persuade that." The animation style that Jared and Chad desired for Cuphead is specifically called rubber hose animation, which is named that because of how character limbs look like, well, rubber hoses. Striking and smooth thanks to being animated in ones, this was the first standardized animation method in the American animation industry, and was primarily used by both Disney and Fleischer until the mid-40s. As you can see by my pathetic attempt at a looping animation with my own copyrighted character Spoonhead here, simple rubber hose animation is an utter pain to get right. It took ages to get this result too, and only for a few seconds, with lots and lots of disregarded drawings. 13 similar yet individual drawings to be exact, with two extremes to help me figure the whole thing out. Scale it up to accommodate jumps, parries, being hit, shooting, ducking, and you've got yourself a single finished character for Cuphead. Well, you know, one that you can actually play as. This was also done entirely with digital technology, whereas Cuphead used good old pencil and paper for every frame to remain authentic, at least just for the animation and not colouring. Apparently, it took an average of 25 minutes to complete a single frame, so consider that the next time you're whining about how long it took you to beat Rumor Honeybottoms. Oh, blast! The sheer difficulty of animating Cuphead would not only be about limiting themselves to most of the tools used in the day, but also about envisioning the game at large in their heads, such as the telegraphed attacks needed to communicate information with the player. Take this animation of the clown withering up, or the rather odd image of the boat chewing. In professional animation, that's called anticipation, which is necessary for emphasizing a movement. In Cuphead, it's used to warn the player about incoming attacks and their severity so that they can dodge it. Hell, it's even timed here too. Bigger attacks have more frames of anticipation than smaller attacks to indicate how severe it shall be. For example, these planes here fire at you after 19 frames, 7 of them animated, whilst Hilda here gets over 100 frames of this animation before she zips across the screen. This is ultimately what separates good players from bad ones in Cuphead. Skilled players shall use the anticipation frames to judge what sort of attack is about to happen and how to dodge it. Cartoons back then also had entire studios dedicated to them instead of just 3 inspired developers. That's why Jared and Chad co-founded Studio MDHR in 2013 to eventually scale up their production to meet demands. Rubber hose, or even hand-drawn animation for that matter, is very uncommon in media nowadays, so to see a game doing it as authentically as possible guaranteed that it would stand out and immediately appeal. The only aspect that separates the animation of Cuphead to its inspiration was how frames were coloured. After comparing and seeing that colouring them in Adobe Photoshop looked identical to colouring them in the authentic way and took far less time, each frame would be redone in ink, scanned into a computer, and then finally coloured. Apparently, Cuphead would have taken 5 years longer to develop if they had stuck with the original way. Regardless of how colour was achieved, the costs of such a difficult ambition required huge gambles from Jared and Chad in the hopes of success. They ended up quitting their jobs and even remortgaged their houses just to ensure that Cuphead could be fully funded through to the end. That's a massive gamble, in addition to the lack of crowdfunding or early access support. It's almost equivalent to a gamble with the devil, which as Cuphead, and sometimes also Mugman, proved, is possible to overcome in both challenge and sales. So, when you end up dying to grim matchstick again, or just can't beat the opening level like poor Dean here, just smile and remember, at least you aren't an animator.